There's a lot of good information out there on training drills, exercises, cues, hand and leg position, body control, the type of gear that you use, what's best suited for which discipline, achieving which result, and all of which is very good information. But what do you do when your exercises aren't working, when your training drills aren't working and you're using all the right gear and you still continually seem like you're dealing with the same problems over and over again?
That's what happens when two worlds collide.
Well, good day everybody. This is Jesse Dick here, and we are back for round 2 in my video series on how horses think and learn. In my first video, I discussed the language of horsemanship. If you have not seen that video, I will be posting a link in the description below. Feel free to go ahead and check that one out. In today's video, we're going to talk about where two worlds collide. I have both experienced and witnessed others experiencing difficulties with their horses when our world and our horse's world collide. And this, to my opinion, is one of the biggest root causes of problems that people deal with on a regular basis working with their horses. I see a lot of people working on all sorts of issues that, quite simply put, are just symptoms of a greater underlying problem, and that is the horse has its own agenda that is different from ours. Now, I've seen this a lot, and I remember a very specific example of a lady that asked me to help her with her horse that was continually falling out of lead. Now, this lady was a very talented rider, very accomplished rider. She had a very good understanding of body control. She had really good hands. She'd done a great job on her horse. Her horse had really good body control. He was soft. He was really broke, had a really good handle on him. But she continually seemed to have this problem. The moment I started watching her ride her horse, I knew right away what the problem was. This horse had its own agenda. He knew the drill. He was very well trained. He had a very clear understanding of what was being asked of him, but he did not want to be doing that. And it reminded me of a scenario that I had several years earlier. I was working on a stallion that I was wanting to show in the reining, and I felt like I was having to continually hold him together in his spins and his circles, and I was constantly trying to fix everything. And the moment I would let him go, it would all kind of fall apart. And so I remember Kyle Shaw. He was helping me with the horse, and he gave me some very good information. I don't know if any of you know Kyle Shaw. He's now the head trainer at Santa Hill Ranch. Very accomplished rider, very accomplished horseman. I have a lot of respect for him, and he helped me a lot. And he told me then, he said, Jess, you need to fix the one biggest problem. Work on the worst problem for now. Just work on one thing. And I was continually trying to fix everything, and I wanted everything to be perfect. I remember one day I pulled out, I was doing the 60-day trainers challenge, and I pulled my challenge colt out and I asked Kyle to give me some advice on him. And my plan with this challenge colt was I wanted to ride him bridleless in the freestyle portion. So anyhow, Kyle watched me riding this colt, and he, like, almost right away, he said, Jess, I wish you'd ride your stud the way you ride this colt. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, and I thought, well, what am I doing different? Now, I'm obviously not very intelligent, because Kyle had been telling me over and over again with the stud horse to make the horse more responsible by allowing him to make his mistake before making the correction. And it just seemed to go in one ear and out the other. My desire to make everything perfect prevented me from allowing the horse to make the mistake and do things badly temporarily in the learning process. So the worst problem that I needed to fix was to get my horse mentally with me. This is an example of my world and the horse's world colliding. We had two different agendas. But I was too busy trying to fix all the symptoms and prevent mistakes that there was really no place where there was no pressure. The horse couldn't ever find a place of complete relief, and as a result, I never fixed the root of the problem. But when Kyle told me that about riding my stud the way I was riding that colt, a light bulb went on in my head, because I realized then that subconsciously, because I was trying to prepare him to ride him bridleless, I was riding him totally differently. And that's the way I needed to be riding my stud. And as soon as I changed how I was riding, all the little problems just went away, and it just seemed like they fixed themselves. And I realized that I was just picking at all the little symptoms all the time and continually making them dissatisfied doing what I wanted them to do. And that was creating or adding to the root problem, which is he did not want to be with me. Now, I love to ride bridleless. I've ridden a lot of horses bridleless in all different stages of training in different scenarios. One of the things that I've found is riding bridleless is kind of an exercise in listening to your horse. It's kind of like giving your horse a megaphone. He's going to tell you loud and clear exactly what he wants to be doing and where he wants to be. Now, when we're working with our horses, so many times we spend all the time doing all the talking. We tell them what to do, what not to do, how to do it, how fast or how slow, how they should carry their head while they're doing it. But we don't often spend a whole lot of time listening to what it is that our horses are trying to tell us. Maybe they're trying to tell us that they don't understand, or they're unsure, or they would rather be somewhere else. But when you take that bridle off, it becomes a lot more obvious to us. Now, another example is I've had the privilege of riding out west with Craig Reeser. I've got a lot of respect for Craig as a horseman. He's helped me a lot more with my horsemanship than probably even he realizes. But I remember on one particular trip I had a 2-year-old colt that was coming along really nicely. He had good understanding of the buttons and body control, and I was really happy with how he's riding at home. And I don't remember exactly what we were doing, but my colt wasn't handling it very well. All the buttons that I had on him at home had disappeared. And what seemed odd to me at the time was Craig had been riding a colt that had a lot less time and he had fewer buttons, but his colt seemed to be better prepared and seemed to be handling it better. Craig gave me some pointers on getting my horse mentally with me a little better by going with the colt and making his idea just uncomfortable enough that he starts to search for what it is that I want, and then allowing him to find total relief doing what it is that I wanted. Pretty quick, the colt gets to be searching for what it is that you want, and he's mentally with you. He wants to do exactly what you want as fast or as slow as you want, and as Craig puts it, he has no agenda of his own. And that's because the horse learns that when he gets with you, that there is zero pressure. And once again, as soon as I got my colt mentally with me, all my buttons came back and he rode just like he did at home. Now, I've seen this scenario play out time and time again, not only with myself, but watching other people working with their horses, and they're working on steering, and they're working on leads, and they're working on collection, and a whole wide range of other things. But the problem isn't the steering. The problem isn't the softness of the horse's face. The problem isn't the leads or the body control. Those are simply symptoms of an underlying problem that the horse is not mentally with you. And once again, as soon as we address the root cause of the problem of getting the horse mentally with the rider, so many of the problems just seem to fix themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, because I absolutely do love to work on body control, and I think it is very important that we understand how a horse's body is supposed to work correctly. But having said that, I think that horses naturally know how to carry themselves better than we do. And if we can get them on the same page to where they actually want to do what it is that we want, I think they're going to be able to carry themselves naturally more correct than if they have their own agenda. Now, another thing I'd like to point out is if we can show our horses that what we want is actually for their own good, they're going to learn a lot faster. Now, an example of this, I had a filly here just not that long ago, a green filly that I took outside for the first time. She didn't have very many rides on her. And we were riding down the road, and it's a very narrow, maybe 2 or 3 foot strip along the side of the road that was actually good traveling. Off into the ditch on the one side was pretty deep snow, and then up onto the road a little bit more, it was pretty icy. So instead of, she wanted to go back to the barn where her buddies were, and she kept kind of wanting to turn either way. But instead of me trying to keep her on that little strip of the road, I allowed her to go off into the ditch a little bit and kind of struggle at that and kind of find out that it was tougher going. Brought her back up onto the road. You know, she'd done that a couple of times, and then I let her go up onto the road a little bit more. And you got to be careful with this, but she kind of slipped around a little bit and found out that that wasn't so good either. And then, you know, try to guide her back onto that little strip. Pretty quick, she just lined out and trotted smoothly on a loose rein down the shoulder of the road. Now I'm going to go through some video examples of horses that aren't quite mentally with me. And I'm going to show you some of the things to look out for, some signs that your horse is telling you that he would rather be somewhere else. In this first example, I've got a young horse that hasn't had a whole lot of work on the turnaround. He's pretty green. He's just starting to hunt the turnaround now. And I'm going to show you a couple of things as he's turning, what to look for, where he's telling me that he wants to be somewhere else. Now, one of the things that I've done is I've marked where the colt's pivot foot was at the start of the turnaround, and I want you to notice where that pivot foot ends up when we're done the turnaround. And so he's drifting from the right hand side of the screen over to the left. And the other thing I want you to notice is the resistance in his face always happens at the same point in the turnaround, which is when I'm asking him to turn in the opposite direction of the way that he's drifting. Notice his hind foot always slides in the same direction. His pivot foot, whenever he moves his pivot foot, he slides it back towards the left side of the screen. This is what we call pigtailing in the turnaround. And it's an indicator of where your horse wants to be. He's telling you where his magnet of attraction is. And so that's something that I always want to pay attention to when I'm turning my horses, and we see the same thing happen with circles as well. Okay, so I've got a little illustration here, a diagram I've drawn up, not very complicated. The point is to show you the concept of the balance point. Now, if you've got a horse, I've got a little magnet drawn down here at this end, and that is to indicate, that's a little horseshoe magnet to indicate that this is the area, the direction in which the horse wishes to be. You've got a little horse here. And so one of the things you'll notice on green colts especially, if you're traveling on a straight line directly away from the magnet, you'll find that he'll want to turn left or right. If he turns to the left or to the right a little bit, you're going to want to support him a little bit with the left rein. If he turns off to the left here, you're going to need to support him a little bit with the right rein to keep him traveling straight. And the more they get turned, the more you're going to need to correct that. And this is an important concept to pay attention to, because you'll notice this balance point will affect circles as well. But I'm using the straight line as an illustration, and you'll see a little bit in the next diagram with the circles how it affects that as well. But notice on rundowns with stops, you know, oftentimes the quality of your stop is going to be affected greatly by the quality of your rundown, the approach to the stop. And if you've got a horse that's really leaning to the left or to the right when he's running down to stop, he's not going to stop that great. And another thing you'll notice is, you know, the magnet on, let's say on this side of the arena, the rundowns and stops will be different than going this direction as opposed to coming and running down and stopping this direction. Okay, so in this diagram we have a circle, and so one of the things that you can use straight lines and circles are a great way to gauge how strong a magnet is pulling on your horse or whatever, and it'll tell you where that magnet is. If you're paying attention, lots of people will think, well, my horse doesn't steer that well, and the truth is, as they're circling, when they come around this side of the circle, the horse will bulge. He'll bulge on that side of the circle, but then coming around, that balance point remember what we talked about balance points. That balance point is about there. Right about here, that horse is going to flatten out. This is on a circle to the left. This horse will flatten out and come across this side, flattening this side of the circle. And then that balance point, being as how the draw is coming that direction, he'll turn and he'll come across, he'll turn sharper here. If it was strictly a steering problem, it would stand to reason that if he didn't want to turn, if you're traveling on a circle to the left here, if he didn't want to turn left, if that was the issue, why is it when you come here, turning left isn't an issue at all? And so that's something that, you know, a lot of people will, they'll work over here, they'll be, oh, this horse is dropping his shoulder over here, and they'll be working on fixing that shoulder dropping, when reality is it's not a shoulder dropping problem at all, it's a magnet issue. So the other thing that you'll find is the circles, just like we showed you in the turnaround demonstration, as the turnaround pigtailed, the circles will tend to want to spiral in the direction of the magnet. And then as a result, one of the things that you'll find, and I'll show you in a demonstration with a horse in a video here coming up, is when you come on this side of the circle, if you asked a horse to pick up the lead going in this direction, let's say you wanted to go to the left and you wanted him to pick up the left lead, but as he comes around here, if you asked him here in this area, he's going to want to pick up the right lead because he wants to go that way. But then as you come around this balance side, all of a sudden if you asked him, and like I'll do this on colts all the time, when they don't know how to pick up the correct lead, I'll ask them coming around here, because it's going to be a lot more likely that they're going to pick up the correct lead because they already want to go, as we've tipped the balance point here, they're going to want to go to the left. So they're going to naturally balance themselves up in a way to pick up that correct lead a little bit better. Okay, so I messed up here and I didn't hit the record button. So I'll have to go over this again here. But one of the things that you'll notice when working on circles is the bulge is going to always be directly opposite of the flat side of the circle. And so now how I address this problem is going to vary a little bit depending on the cause of the problem. So if I have a horse that's really gravitating towards this end of the circle because there's a gate here, or maybe he's got some buddies over here or whatever, I'm going to address that a little bit differently than if the horse was flattening this side of the circle because there's maybe a banner on the fence here or something that makes him a little bit nervous down at this end. But what I'll do is I'll start my circle and I'll show him where that circle is, and then I'll allow him to drift off that circle, and then I'll put him to work here. Maybe I'll trot some circles and kind of bump on him with my legs and maybe trot some figure eights. Maybe I'll roll him back into the fence a time or two, whatever, and I'll just try to make him just uncomfortable enough that he starts searching for another option. And then as soon as he does, I'll present him with my original plan, which was trotting the circle or loping the circle, either one, and I'll allow that to feel a lot better to him. And I'm not going to worry that it's perfect. Even if he's still a little flat here, I don't want to get caught up in saying, well, you got to pick up your shoulder here. If you do that, you're kind of counterproductive to making this part uncomfortable. What you're trying to do is adjust his magnet a little bit. And if you make him too uncomfortable over here, then just it makes this, what you've done here, less effective. What you want to do is maybe after you've made him uncomfortable down at this end, you'll bring him over here and maybe let him stop and rest over here, and that will make what you've done here way more effective and cause him to readjust that magnet and want to be a little bit more balanced on a circle. And then again, getting back to this issue over here with a horse being a little unsure down at this end of something, you're going to want to build his confidence, and maybe we won't do too much making him uncomfortable over here, but we're just going to try to maybe not make too big a deal about anything. Maybe we'll just kind of go around and then stop them kind of down in this direction a little bit and let them rest. And then maybe we'll change directions and do the same thing. And we'll just kind of keep on letting him rest closer and closer to this area until he's right next here and not worried about it at all. And then if that's the main issue of why your circles aren't round, well, that's going to solve that without having to work on too much fighting on the circles or whatever. Okay, so in the next video example here that I'm going to show you, I'm riding a stud horse that hadn't been rode in a while, and he was feeling pretty fresh and kind of he was not with me mentally. He really wanted to go back to the barn, and in this video I'm going to show you I wanted to lope some left circles. If you'll watch as he comes around, he kind of argues with me in the face a little bit. He wants to go to the left side of the screen. When I ask him to lope, he picks up the wrong lead here. He picks up the right lead going to the left. Now, one of the things I want you to notice, I break him down, and as I round the corner and then ask him to pick up the lead again, he has no trouble picking up that correct lead once we've tilted past that balance point. So as you can see, as we come around the same side of the circle, he kind of argues with me again. It's the same place in which he picked up the wrong lead the first time I asked him. Now, he didn't give me a really good example of him dropping his shoulder on the off side of the circle when we were going to the left, but when we changed directions and went to the right, then he did give me a really good example of dropping that shoulder and flattening out that off side of the circle. And I'll show you that here, where he comes around here, and I have to pick up my hand and guide him out of the circle, kind of hold that shoulder up a little bit. And this is something that you'll see a lot with reining horses. As they're coming around the circle, on one side of the circle they'll be ever so slightly holding that shoulder up, and as they reach that balance point of that magnet, then all of a sudden they'll have to change and start steering in and guiding him towards the inside of the circle a little bit more. And so basically this is examples of horses telling us they'd rather be somewhere else. Well, folks, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions, feel free to post the questions in the comment section below. If you haven't seen the first one, like I said, I'll be posting the link to the first one. I hope to be making more of these, and I would love to hear your input as to what you would subjects that you would like to talk about. Thanks for now. Until next time, God bless.
That's what happens when two worlds